Okay, looks like the webinar has started. So I'd like to call this meeting of the New Mexico Museum of Space History Governor's Commission to order. And as I do that, I just wanted to state that yesterday was NASA's Day of Remembrance. I don't know if any of you had a chance to listen into any of that or see it. It was broadcast on YouTube, on NASA TV. And it's a very meaningful day for folks in the agency, especially those of us that have been around long enough to have lived through some of those tragedies. And we take that time to remember those people, many of whom are up on the wall in the museum. And it got me thinking a lot about that and about the history that we preserve and they produce. So I didn't want to say too much more about that. I just wanted to let everybody know that that was yesterday and was a very important day, and at least in my life. Okay, I think from the point of view of the commission, I see that we have Commissioners Churchill, Cross, Elder, Fahey, Martinez, McAteer, O'Leary, Omig, and myself, John Haas, are present today. And I believe Commissioners Fryer and Tappan will not be present today. Okay, Chris, can I ask you to introduce folks from your team who are here today?
Yep, sure. Yeah, sure can. Billy Jones, the Deputy Director, is online. Dave Dooling, just raise your hand because I'm introducing you. So Dave Dooling, Education Director online. Kathy Harper, Marketing Director. Warren Eanes, IT guru and kind of overseer of all things Zoom for us in the meeting online. And then Sharon Masters, Executive Assistant online as well.
Okay. Let's see. I see we've also got Patrick Moore from DCA. And we have Valerie Joe from the Attorney General's office. And have I missed anybody there? We have anyone from the foundation who's on today? Oh, doesn't look like it.
I can see Johnny's office, but he's not quite there.
Yes, there it is. there's Johnny Powell.
Yeah.
Okay. First order of business is to approve the agenda for today. I don't have any specific changes, although after it's really not an agenda change. I do intend when we get down to the discussions of the collections committee to make the appointments to that committee. We didn't do that last time. And my understanding is that doesn't need to be on the agenda to do that. But I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down to that particular action item. I'll
move that we approve.
Very good. Don, a second?
Second.
So approved. The second fourth agenda item, I'm sorry, is the approve the meeting minutes from last time. And I only had one correction to make, and that was just the clarification on the announcements last time. We did mention a cultural event that was going on that was inaudible on the agenda, and that was that dedication of that wing for Clarence H. Fielder. And we can get you the details of that. That has actually been moved to April 11th of 22 due to the pandemic.
John,
yes?
It's April 22nd.
I said that, yes. April.
No, you said April 11th.
Oh, did I? April 22nd.
Yep. Okay.
I'm looking at the number 22.
That's okay. That's okay. It was February 11th. Now it's April 22nd, and hopefully it doesn't move from there.
which creates a problem because that is the next scheduled date of our next commission meeting. So we can think about how to deal with that while we are chewing our way through the agenda. Are there
John,
any
I'll move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Don. Do we have a second? Or any more corrections?
I would just like a clarification on the spelling. Is it Clarence H. Fielder, Fielder?
Yes, that's correct. Just like an outfielder.
Got it.
Thank you.
And Sharon, I can send you that invitation too.
I'm sorry, and was there a second to approve the minutes?
Second.
So approved. Okay, DCA report, item number 5. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John. Good to see everybody today. Extend the regrets of the cabinet secretary. She had hoped to be here, but is spending time, I think, with her boss right now. So I have the privilege of being able to share with you sort of some highlights of what's going on and try not to wander into the report that Chris will give. Most critically, as you are all aware, we are in the middle of the legislative session, a short session, so it is primarily focused on financial issues and moving issues forward. We know that there are a number of capital elements involved, as well as I think some funds in a junior bill that our local legislators down there are carrying. There may be a time when they will call upon you for an assistance on that front, and I know that Chris and Michaeline Kerala, our legislative liaison, can provide assistance with that. Shifting gears to more operational issues from higher level, COVID still continues to be a challenge for everybody. To clarify for those people who might have concerns, we are not looking at closing any of our sites in light of current conditions. That is not on the agenda. I know a number of people have inquired about that, but we are being very focused on continued safety for both our staff and our visitors which come in there. So with that, the new protocols we're implementing, which you can find actually online, they're statewide for all state employees about reporting, etc. We have also shifted some of our core operations for those staff who can telecommute. We're encouraging them to do so just to limit participation in the building. This is not a directive that's coming down that they must, but just to provide safe and operation where we possibly can. Key on the financial side with the legislature that's going on, the major thing that we're looking for from the DCA side is an increase. We're looking at a request this year in the budget of $46.4 million. That's an increase of about $3.8 million, which is around 9% that we're looking at. And there are a number of critical initiatives that the secretary is very much behind. Most central to this is the creation of a Southern Facilities Manager and administrative support. One of the key challenges that the secretary had when she came in was how can we work more directly with all DCA entities across the state. I know there are a number of folks who remember, especially many who are on this thing, that it was sort of out of sight, out of mind for a long time for many of those entities outside of the Santa Fe core. And being the director of historic sites, first and foremost, I think we were at the very bottom of the pile, although probably not that much for Farm and Ranch and the Space Museum. With that said, very much a transition, and how can we provide critical support all the time, all of our entities across the state. And the DCA Facilities Bureau is now under the direction of Lena Herrera up in Santa Fe. And he spends a lot of time on the road, et cetera. We realize really the way to provide key support to our Southern museums and historic sites is by having some very direct hands-on. And so the funds that they are looking for in this new bill, this new budget request, focuses on that Southern Facilities Manager, so we can really elevate those and respond to issues that Chris for a long time has looking at perhaps the squeaky wheel scenario that you have to push and push a long time, and now it just moves right to the forefront. So that's really the high level elements of where we are right now, and we certainly appreciate all the staff who are continuing to work diligently under this, and a lot of the really incredible things that Chris and his staff have accomplished at the museum, and hope all of you have had the opportunity to come and visit. So with that, I stand for questions on the DCA fund.
I just have one, Patrick. I believe that that hearing took place in the House Appropriations and Finance Committee already, but has not yet gone through the Senate. Is that correct?
That is correct. So it's still working its way through the Senate. I'm not sure where it is on the Senate side where they'll hear it. They'll hear that budget as well, but I know they'll all keep moving forward, and we will send that information out to everybody when those hearings take place. I know Johnny was on that call. Thank you, John. So that if people are interested, that they can tune in. They're all done virtually right now.
Oh,
so
thank you.
The budget process continues to grind forward.
No further questions from me. Anyone else have any questions for Patrick? Okay. Let's see. Move over to International Space Hall of Fame Foundation comments from Mr. Powell today. Hey, Johnny.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Cliff usually likes to join us. Beg his forgiveness for that. He's on travel. He thinks some family members getting married is very important to him. So he and his family are in Oklahoma right now over by Fort Sill. And so anyway, he sends his greetings. Secondly, we don't have much to report this time. This is really traditionally kind of a very slow time, but we do have some exciting news. And our Trinity site tour continues to be a good event for us. Right now, we have just over 260 visitors, and we registered for that. And so using the joke of comparing that to buses, we go 50 buses. So anyway, we're about 5 rows into bus 6. So we got a little ways to go to get to that bathroom in bus 6, but we're going to stop with bus 6. And so as soon as we get to the bathrooms. And so we're good to go on that. And we fully expect to hit our target of 300 guests. We still have about 3 months left to go, and a couple of more email pushes that we can make. But we're still getting about 10 registrants a week. So that puts us on target to complete that registration cycle. Speaking of Trinity, we've also with that opened up just normal reservations for October. And to give you to compared right now, we've got 109 groups in this current Trinity. Well, we have 36 groups already with reservations for October. So as you can see, if our numbers hold for the group sizes, which our reservations have a tendency to be a little bit larger than our actual registrations. Well, we're probably somewhere in about the middle of bus 3 right now, or towards that in our October. So that continues to be a really good fundraising event for us. Nothing else major to report. We're kind of on standstill on anything that we may do for the 4th of July. I have had a meeting with the city last week that got canceled due to some infrastructure problems that they were having on their end. And I'm hoping to reschedule, but they haven't made clear yet what their intentions are. Last year, they had a citywide event, and the foundation just can't compete with a city event. And so we just don't know what we're going to do this year until we actually sit down with the city. I did talk to some commissioners, and they're unsure of what the city actually has planned for that. So I've got a meeting with the city manager to try to confirm that. But we're going to need to know something pretty quick in order to be able to get any type of significant planning for the 4th of July. But of course, with big crowds and stuff like that, COVID continues to be a challenge for that too. So we have a little bit of uncertainty there. And but other than that, we're moving right along. I'll just open it up for any questions that you guys might have. One other point that I would make is that we had a really good time since we last met. We attended a street festival that we had for Christmas on Main Street, where we were just part of a whole bunch of stuff up and down our main drag, our main city street here in Alamogordo. And we took the gift shop out there and had a really good time out there. And we always get out in the street, we shoot our whistle rockets and we play with all of that. And we enjoyed about $1,000 in sales. Actually sold 3 telescopes, which is really a good thing for us at that event. So it really kind of brought that out and several little STEM projects. But one of my favorite stories to come out of that event is it's right outside of the Flickinger, which is an old movie theater that's been repurposed for plays and kind of an event center. And so they set up the stage with Santa Claus and all the Christmas lights and the snow village and all that behind him, and had all this in here. And one of the board members that sits on the Flickinger was talking to me and said that they had to be walking through the theater when they heard some kids up on there and Santa Claus. They were taking pictures with Santa Claus, and what they wanted was a rocket launcher. And I thought that was just so cool, because their first comment, that Johnny, he's out there and that got his crew out there shooting rockets in the street. So now all the kids want rocket launchers. So we hope that we're influencing some of them positively in some way. But we had a really good time. And so anyway, I'll open it up for any questions that you guys might have.
Any questions for Mr. Powell or the foundation? Beth?
Yeah, Johnny, you seem to do such a great job with these visits to the Trinity site. I'm wondering, over the last 4 or 5 years, what kind of how much do these tours make after expenses? Does it varied, or is it kind of steady?
Well, I can only speak for about the last 3 years, which is what I've been involved in it. But I do understand historically what I saw at the very beginning was kind of typical. When the event started, and Kathy can maybe speak to a little more of this than I did. I understand we've been doing this now for about 8 years, if that sounds about right, Kathy. And the event typically was a 1-bus event. Occasionally they got it to a 2-bus event. But with COVID, somehow or another, I really think we accidentally let our marketing leak. I think the press was bored and picked up on the marketing press release, and our press release expanded, which was really an epiphany for us, because when it did that, our reservations just shot up exponentially. And so we decided to start trying to actually put them into buses. And so the last event that we did in October was the first time that we took 6 buses from that traditional 1, occasional 2 of the previous 14 to 16, at 2 a year. I think had about 10, 12. I'm not sure exactly the number previously. But so we did we just followed that and did that on purpose this time. And we're enjoying the same results. And so we want to continue doing that. Now, to answer your question, Beth, as to what it typically makes, right now our reservation fee is $95 a person. So at 300 people, it's roughly a $30,000 event. We also do some add-on sales. Another thing that we did in the last Trinity event that was kind of unique is we drugged a gift shop down there at 5:30 in the morning and brought them in, and they did over $1,300 before we pulled out of the parking lot at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that was really, really good for us. But with that many people, you got to hit somewhere. And so with that said, generally our expenses right now going up with the COVID and inflation and all that, we were closer to last month or last time to a $10,000 event, which was up. It was a little bit over almost $2,000 a bus, which is up from about $800 to $1,000 a bus. That's just COVID. And it's gone up even more. We're a little closer to that $2,000 mark now. Our 6 buses now are going to be over $10,000 just for the buses. By the time we buy food and all that, I expect our expenses this time to probably push 14 to 18. Last time we were pushing 10 to 15, and we netted probably my mud on the wall is still 13, about that right there. So we did about 17,000 in gross revenue. Net revenue after expenses on the last event, which is really a big event for us. That was bigger than the Academy did for us 2 years ago. But the last full Academy that we had. So just that one event that with 300 people that's done in one day got in and out faster than 8 weeks of Academy. So I don't know if that says anything, but it does say that it's a little easier to manage. You don't have to be right for one day, And so, but with that, we do expect to have to go up in our fee. It was announced in our registrations that we would be looking at raising that fee. We predicted about $104.50. And this was actually before we started getting some of our newer inflation numbers, and things are just continuing to spiral out of control. So we may be at 109, 110, but after this event, before we open up actual registration for October, we will reevaluate that fee. And unfortunately, we are going to be over $100 a bus. But I'd like to keep that with right now. If we can maintain the 6 buses, the education component for 6 buses, and the support component for being able to check 300 people in, because that in itself is kind of a task, because you're doing that in less than an hour. and getting them on their buses and getting all their stuff in their hands. And so we're kind of working on that, but I hope to keep that margin, maintain those margins of this being at least a $15,000 to an $18,000 fundraising event twice a year for us. And then we'll go from there on what we do with the funding and stuff. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, congratulations. That's just great success during hard times. Are you thinking of getting T-shirts that says "I visited Trinity"? And
well, that's a good
those?
idea. We have hats. We have some hats, and we sell a Trinity book. But yeah, we can add T-shirts to the repertoire. Right now, we're just doing good to get inventory. It's really kind of tough out there, but we'll certainly look at that now that we've got more people, and try to make it clever enough that is also something that we can just put in the gift shop as a standard staple, and people just buy it as a regular souvenir. But that's a very good idea, Beth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Johnny? Johnny, I want to just also add my thanks to all the work that you and the foundation do in your mission to support the museum. It really is very important, and I want everybody to recognize that. I'm sure they do. So thank you.
And thank you all.
Okay, agenda item number 7, Chris, Division Director's report.
Okay, so my written report went out to everybody, so hopefully you got a chance to take a look at that. I'll try not to repeat as much as possible from that report. Bottom line, the museum is fully reopened with our full hours. The theater is open up again. What allowed that is the restrooms to be completed. They are completed operationally. They are not fully completed with all the work inside. There's a few things left to do, and we're putting up the graphics exhibit portions in there now. So that's what's going on at the moment. So, by the way, they do look really, really nice, especially when the graphics go up with the floors. They're absolutely beautiful. We'll take pictures of them again when they're all completely done and shoot that out to everybody just so that you can see them. But we're able to be open. We did open up a new movie, Dinosaurs of Antarctica. It's doing well. And we'll keep that running all the way through the summer alongside Apollo 11 and our live star show. We have major work going on campus right now in 2 areas, on campus and then also over at the Museum Support Center. At the Museum Support Center, there was a big list of projects in there to install HVAC, walls, cover up old holes, cracks, holes throughout the building. There's going to be some electrical work, and then getting rid of an old garage door, all of essentially the leaks that are in the building, with the exception of we still have issues of drainage around the outside. That's a separate issue that's going to be dealt with next fiscal year, hopefully. But right now we're dealing with all of the ancient, because the building is very old, holes in the building. COVID has affected the staff, as you heard Patrick mention a little bit, not significantly. For a brief period of time, we went with as many people as possible on telework, and that was a good number of people. Right now, we only have a few people that are on partial telework. Everybody else is here out at the museum. We also are limiting new big gathering events. We're not eliminating any ones that were already on the books, because there would be legal issues there, but we're limiting the new ones. So things like Launchpad lectures are still going to go on, but rentals and things like that haven't happened yet, we're trying not to book any of those things based on the current health orders that are out from the governor. We did do some work around the Hubbard building, removing a couple of old structures that were outside of it, and we're going to be dropping in a new storage building. It's one of those modular buildings that's going to be put in, and then eventually it will be powered, and we'll have HVAC out to it as well down the line. The work that we've been wanting to get done on xeriscaping and concrete has been delayed by bids for a couple of months now. It is crazy trying to get bids for things right now. And when the bids come in, they're quite shocking. As you can imagine, with the price increases in the construction world, they're huge increases. And so we're just starting to get those in now. We got the first of the concrete bids earlier this week, and we're quite shocked at some of the numbers that came in. They were large jumps from what they're originally been predicted. So we'll have to see which projects actually can get done this fiscal year, and which may need to wait until next fiscal year with the funds we have available. We started working on the science fiction, science fact exhibit, The Gathering, and then we're going to start writing for it soon after we finish up really with the restrooms and get those going. Johnny talked much about Trinity, and that event is going along nicely. We also will have Yuri's Night in April, as long as the health order allows. That's far enough in the future that we can kind of plan on that one. And that's a members event. So that will be coming down the pipe. We've done that in previous years prior to COVID, and hopefully we're bringing it back this year along with summer camp, very obviously. The other event that we haven't gone out with press releases on it yet, but Jack Schmidt has agreed to do an Apollo 17 event here at the museum on December 9th. So 50th anniversary of Apollo 17. There may only be one other Apollo 17 50th anniversary event that he does, and that might be with an Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, although they haven't approached him yet about doing an event. But he's not planning on doing anything else really, except for maybe a couple of lectures in places. And so what we're thinking of is a Friday, Saturday event that would include some science panels, some tours around the area on Saturday, the gala in the evening on Friday. It would also include not only the speeches and things like that, but also we're looking at bringing the Big Band Theory musical group from JPL out here. They are a very good big band group, and so them, and then working with the Flickinger jointly to do a concert on Saturday for the public as well. So a number of events would be going on that entire weekend as far as the Apollo 17 50th anniversary. So we're excited about that. The last thing that are really two things. One on the collections list with the Dan Slater items that came out here. What I'll put out, you saw it was a very long list of items that he has donated to us, and then he loaned a number of items that are out of what I'm going to call more of the core collection that he has, which are the very, very high-end items, which he's been holding on to very, very closely to those. He has the whole warehouse and a bunch of items in his garage, no kidding, that are located out there in California. And in the basement of his house, he has a whole bedroom down there that has got cabinets in it that has, 4 diskies, the display keyboards from the Apollo spacecraft. He essentially can make an entire command module control panel with the components that he has down there, engines, items flown on US and Russian, Soviet spacecraft, etc. And those were things that he was holding on to. Wasn't ready to let go with, but at the end of this last visit that we made in November, he finally said, it's time for me to start letting these things go, and I'm going to loan them for now. They'll probably become yours eventually, but at least I still quote unquote own them. That at least I'm moving them out, and so that was amazing progress. And so he agreed to right off the bat, because we didn't really have a whole lot of space left. Everything had already been loaded up into the pods unit, and all we had was a van that I was already bringing back props, artifacts for the sci-fi exhibit. We had enough room to put in some of the spy cameras that he's got that are actually flown, some R4D maneuvering engines from the Apollo spacecraft, and a surveyor camera system. Which is, all of those are extremely rare and worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars each. And so each of those diskies, essentially, if it were to go for auction, would go for over $250,000. And so they're very rare, these things. And so in any case, so the good news is he wants to essentially clear out that room as well, and loan and or donate these items to the museum, and wants us to come back sometime before the summer. And so that will be coming down the pipe. No schedule yet. We are trying to get through this first round, which we've gotten all the information to him, all the loan documentation. Right now, all of the items are being appraised. Once all that's over, then we'll move on to the next phase. And we don't do the appraisal. That's done by another organization. And so in any case, that is in progress right now. the last item, I do want to bring up a little bit more just on the budget issues that Patrick brought up before. Obviously, there are increases that were requested by both the executive and the legislative finance committee meeting for DCA. So far, the House Finance Committee meeting adopted the legislative version, but they are looking potentially at add-ons to that, one of them being the Southern maintenance folks that would be personnel additions to help oversee maintenance work here in the Southern divisions for the Department of Cultural Affairs. There's also capital requests that are in for DCA. DCA has the potential between the special tax funds and also the capital monies to get the most money that they've really gotten ever. So from this legislative session. So that is very likely. There is also a capital request in for our museum itself that is up to the local legislators to the tune of $656,000 and some change. So that is up and will be debated eventually, and our legislators will determine whether or not we get those funds or some portion of those funds, or potentially none, as we did last year. We have in the past gotten almost $1 million from those types of funding sources. They also are, the discussions that they told me that they're looking to submit funds for us in the junior bill. Some of it would be recurring monies. We would get it every year from now on. And some of it would be 1 year only monies. So we don't know what is going to go up for that. They asked us what needs we had. We told them, and they'll essentially pick and choose between us and New Mexico State University and the School for the Blind and the state parks and things like that that are in this area as to whether or not they fund any of the projects and needs for any of those entities. So there's a potential for there to be a lot of money for improvements in the next fiscal year, but we won't know really until the end of the session what really comes out of that one. Just one last note for everybody's information. I will be on travel for family. I got 2 daughters that are moving to Florida, so I will be out there apartment hunting with them in February, and then possibly moving them to Florida in March 7th and 10th. I'll be in California in Salt Lake City at the Giant Screen Cinema Expo, seeing new films that are out and in production or that are coming ready in the near future, and then also seeing a demonstration in Salt Lake City of the first essentially giant digital dome, i.e. it's all digital screens. And the first one ever installed in the world is in Salt Lake City. And so the Giant Screen Cinema Association is doing a preview and a demonstration of that technology for the folks who are part of the GSCA. So that I'll be out of town for as well. So that's kind of the status of the museum. I open myself up for questions, comments, etc.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments for Chris Orwell?
Keep up the good work.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate what you put in your report. Beth.
Yeah, Chris, have you identified your needs in terms of finding grants and other places, other sources of funds for upcoming museum exhibits and infrastructure, say, over the next 2 or 3 years?
So what's going on right now, and part of this is the limited nature of our staff, and we don't have really the capacity for grant writing. That's something that hopefully eventually Foundation, and we've been asking for a development coordinator for the staff. We had one, we were trying to hire one, et cetera. So as far as the needs, yes, all the needs for us are all, we've got multiple infrastructure needs, although not as many as we did, 9 years ago. And most of our needs at this point in time are going to be for exhibits. And then here in another, I will say, when we go through the long range strategic plan and we're creating that, the idea when we looked at it, 5 years ago, was that here coming up towards the 50th anniversary was when we were going to start the fundraising for another facility here on campus. And so that was going to be essentially for the large artifacts that we need to get on display that we don't have covered display area for and size and space for. So that will be another big piece of it. So But that won't start up for about 2 years. So as far as identifying, yeah, we've identified grant sources, some of them being IMLS and things like that, that have funds available. We are going to be submitting grants for exhibits, nothing yet for the building. And when we do the exhibit grants, we're going to be doing the first really submission for the next round of the Save America's Treasures grants. That will be the biggest grant that we've written outside of what we got this year. So we got a couple of $100,000 this year in grant monies that were used for budgets and upgrades and things like that. But the exhibit stuff, and then we'll also be submitting for some grant money for restoration in our rocket park as well, which if you take a look at the capital list, is due in a couple of years for us as well, that we've put onto there. And it's been on for a while as well. So the answer is yes. As far as who's going to be writing it, that's going to be figured out here in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions for Chris? Okay, thanks again, Chris. I appreciate all the stuff that's been going on there, and how the museum, you and your staff have dealt with the last 2 years. Okay, on to my report. There are a couple of items I wanted to go over, and I will try to be brief too. So first, I want to congratulate again, Chris on the reconstruction process and the recent new hires that he's been able to pull in, and all the progress that's been made on the outward-looking exhibits. Every time I go to the museum, I can see that there's improvements there, and they're apparent. As Patrick pointed out, and Chris just mentioned, on January 14th, the budget hearing took place with the House Appropriations and Finance Committee. And there's going to be that hearing before the Senate Finance Committee, which isn't, I think, scheduled yet. But I talked to Jane Egan, and she'll make sure that we get informed about when that is once that hearing is scheduled. And I'll say again, just reiterate what Chris said, there was this additional request for $656,000 to be allocated from the legislators' discretionary capital outlay funds, which would go directly to the museum. That is referred to LCS project number 116. And I say that specifically because one of the best ways that the commission can help to ensure that these requests are realized is by contacting your legislators and request support for the administration's capital outlays, as well as those that will benefit the Space History Museum specifically. And specifically, we should refer to LCS Project 116 when we make those contacts. So I'll just pass that on and encourage you to let your legislators know your opinions on that. Let's see. So also, since the previous commission meeting, I had the opportunity to meet twice with the secretary to discuss some ideas for strategic planning. And I'll talk about a couple of those in a few minutes. I was able to make another visit to the museum and spend a little time speaking to Sue Taylor, who's with us today, and meet some other staff. And I really appreciate the time that you, Sue, and others spent telling me about your work. And now that I'm starting to work with the collections committee, I want to return to the museum this quarter and spend a little bit more time learning about just the process of curation and archiving, of which I basically know nothing, and see if that staff can help me identify some opportunities to strengthen the processes and let me know how you folks feel the commission can be helpful. So like I said, I've been doing some thinking about strategic planning, and I did speak to the secretary and Director Orwell together at the museum and in a separate meeting with the secretary. We were out there last month, and some of my observations and the idea of taking more time than we originally gave ourselves to do a better job is one of the things I want to talk about. I had to go revisit some of my earlier training on, what strategic planning means to help me sort out my thoughts on this. And I'd like to share those with the commission. Strategic plans do need to be goal oriented. They need to be measurable and achievable and serve as a mission aligned touchstone to all of us and to the organization. So there's a degree of specificity that we need, along with flexibility, right? The environment changes, and whatever plan we come up with is not going to be what really happens. So this whole pandemic situation has made one key aspect of strategic planning hugely more difficult. And namely, that is, in my mind, the necessity of beginning a strategic plan in a more intuitive or creative, inclusive, team-oriented phase. It's how I think successful strategic plans begin. This is where we dream a little bit and we debate what's possible, and we talk about how that aligns with our mission and it reflects the needs of our stakeholders. And personally, I don't see how that can be effectively accomplished in a virtual environment. It's just, I thought about how we might do that, and I keep coming up with reasons it's just not going to work very effectively. So back in November, we were looking forward to being together today, and that was the plan, and I was excited about it. And I don't need to expound on why that didn't happen. But I really think we're making some real progress towards getting back to a sense of normalcy. So one thing I'm exploring for the coming quarter is a way to get the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee together at the museum for a day, along with the staff from the museum, representatives from DCA, the foundation, and other stakeholders, to spend at least some of that time in a facilitated session where we explore some of those intuitive aspects as a first thing. This, I believe, will lay the foundation for what we need to do to build this plan over, say, the next 6 months. I've had some initial conversations about how this might be accomplished. I've had a couple conversations with the secretary on this. And this is something I would like to work towards before our next commission meeting. So I'm just letting you know some of my thoughts on that. And I'll say a couple more things about the collections committee later when we talk about, when we get back down to that part of the agenda. So that's what I've been working on over the last quarter. And again, I've really appreciated the opportunity to be able to visit the museum again and hear what all the good folks who keep it together there are doing. So any questions for me on any of my thoughts or observations?
John, Paulo here. Can we have a list? I don't know, there are so many lists, but for the legislature, so we can probably put it on a, I don't know if we can do this, put all the list of the legislators involved in this, what is it, one capital outlay, the 116 that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think I do have the information I can put together and at least get you something on that. Jane Egan's been nice enough to share a lot of that information with me. And I can ask that there were some, I can pass on that there were some requests for some specifics on that. And we can pass that on to everybody. So
yeah, and then if we can have it, everybody can access that list on Google document or something like that, that we can identify the legislature we're familiar with, that we know, and then we can reach out to them and communicate the support for this bill. Any particular language that we should be using as well, that would be helpful. So we are on the same message.
Yeah, there is in fact a set of talking points that was put out by the Secretary's office that help us deal with that kind of thing. So I'll get you that too, and I'll speak to them about putting together some information so that we know who to talk to and can try to capture as many of those resources as we can for this museum.
Yeah, so that'll be good to know the committees. Who do we need to go after? That'll be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Paulo. I'll follow up on that. Any more questions or comments from me? Okay. Let's see. I have on an item number 9 is really just a standing item that I wanted to add to the agenda, and that's this discussion of, a key decision schedule for the commission. And I had, envisioned that initially being where we get some input from DCA, from Patrick and from Chris on, things that were coming up that we really needed to, get on our radar and make sure we were paying attention to. And I'm still would like to hear if there are any particular items on there. The two things which are currently on, my personal planning agenda are, one, this trying to better facilitate the process of getting into the strategic planning and trying to pursue a path towards helping that, resolve itself over a little bit longer than we had originally, given ourselves. I'm really hopeful that we can do some of that face to face. So that's item number 1. And the second one, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, is a forward plan for what I think how I think the collections committee can best support the mission of the museum in a supportive way. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes later. But I don't know if Patrick or Chris had anything specific that they wanted to put on our radar so we could at least get that logged in and thinking about it.
Once again, when we had this discussion at the last meeting, it's still there's a few things that are repetitive when you talk about key decision-making things, where the staff or DCA through what the charter is for the commission that we come to you with. So one of them's going to be if we're making a recommendation for inductions, we will do that. Generally, we do that to set up for an October event, so we would do it in the winter when we're going to be doing things like that. The other thing is price increases. Once again, we normally will make a proposal at the end of one calendar year, so at usually the October meeting, that we can then vote on at the next one. Or if we see that we need to make the change earlier, we have in past years actually made a recommendation at the summer meeting to implement at the end of the calendar year, right after the Christmas New Year's rush that people may have already planned for. So that's another thing, because the commission actually oversees our price increases. In your discussion of the collections plan, it looks like there will be some more stuff involved with that down the line, with reports and decisions that will be necessary on a more frequent basis and at every meeting for collections, materials, in, out, etc. So that's another possibility, but not actually codified yet with the current version of the 2020 collections plan. And then the other thing is a much longer thing, which is the strategic plan. And that's essentially every 3 to 5 years, depending on when, there's a review of it every year, but as far as revising it, that's a 3 to 5 year kind of thing. And it depends on when the commission wants to do that. We were into that period a year and a half ago.
Right.
We are, so, and that's thank you, COVID, for delaying that process ever so slightly. And so the good thing is, just as a reminder for all the commissioners, that our current strategic plan goes through 2022, through the end of this year. So, and it's very easy when we talk about key decisions. One of the things that we're looking on, depending on what we're able to do with what the chair, John, is talking about, as far as getting together and talking about how we can facilitate this. It's very easy for us to just do essentially a bridge plan for a year, which is essentially an extension with a couple of minor course changes, and then that bridges it out for another year. And then we could, that would set us up for being able to, as we come out of the world of COVID, not that I think we ever will completely come out of it, but we go into a more of an operational phase, our status with being able to get together, being able to get larger stakeholder groups together, which is step 1 of that process. Then we'll be able to do that, and that may push us very obviously into 2023, because generally creating something like this takes 9 to 12 months to be done correctly, with all of the research, and then all of the creation, then all of the review, et cetera, et cetera. So. But those are the key decision-making things that are on tap. Nothing at this meeting, nothing specifically at the next meeting, except for what you're adding ad hoc with maybe new procedures, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One other thing I'll just point out that's on my radar, and this is no particular. One of the other thing that's on my radar, and this is no particular reflection at all of Chris, is that there is in the law, we are obligated apparently to do an annual performance review of the director according to subpart J, and just submit our report to the secretary, and we'll do that. And and there is a standing review committee which we have not staffed and we have not talked about previously, that has been established to perform that review and to acknowledge that expectation in the statute, that subpart J of our responsibilities as a commission. I have that on my penciled in on my list of things that we need to address one of these days. And I wanted to get started with the strategic planning stuff and some of the more operational things that I thought we should be doing first, but that I'll bring that up one of these next couple of commissions, but I just wanted to alert you to it that was something that is still on our to-do list. Any other items to talk about with respect to do items? Okay. All right, one of our to-do items is actually number 10, which is a discussion, which is the annual determination of what constitutes reasonable notice of the commission's public meetings. This is basically a revalidation of standing rule number 1. And I had some conversations with Valerie Jo about that. There were some clarifications that needed to be made in the rule, and Valerie's going to just talk us through some of the changes that she drafted for our consideration, and then we'll just discuss that, and if we like it, we'll adopt those changes. Valerie?
I distributed the old version and the modified one, which clarified that there would be 72 hours from the agenda being posted to the meeting date. Before there was language, and this was discussed at a prior meeting where I had a differing opinion, that there could be some confusion if you state in the document that you post the notice of the meeting and the agenda at the same time. But of course, that is for the commission members to think about, what way provides the most information to the public and how they would like to proceed in terms of providing that agenda to the public. And I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
So from the perspective of the language that's specifically in the standing rule, what it really does govern is as I understand it, is how and where we post public notice of these meetings and how many days notice we give for both of those documents, and those that 72-hour rule and the 10-day rule are, in my opinion, fine, and the amount of notice is also, I think, appropriate for how we've been operating with respect to the public-facing part of our duty. I think what I will work towards is internally getting some of that information distributed to the commission a little bit more quickly. But I think that's more of a working operational thing for us to deal with internally, and it's really something I can work on. I don't think we have to make any changes to the standing rule to significantly affect that. Any other comments or questions on the draft that was sent out? Beth?
Yeah, I have a comment. I understand that, the 72-hour rule for the agenda. So if the meeting is posted 10 days before, usually on the website, it used to be on a newspaper or whatever, changes to the agenda, we would receive the agenda, our draft agenda, if commissioners want to put something on or change the order of things prior to the 72 hours. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, and that
You
really,
would you would need to give us a draft agenda prior to 72 hours. Or a couple
Yeah,
of
and
days before.
yes, and I really think that for that to happen, because one of my duties is as the chair is to draft that agenda and provide it. It really is down to me to fulfill that expectation. And so what I need to do is do a better job of getting that draft agenda out to the commissioners with a call to add items to it prior to sending it back to Chris and to DCA for finalizing it and distributing it. So I think that if there's an expectation to receive an opportunity to affect that agenda at an earlier date, that's really down to me, and I will take full credit for it not getting out sooner than getting posted because I didn't put the final parts of that together until this Monday. So yeah, that's down to me, and I can improve that so that you all get that in a more timely fashion.
And Chair,
Right.
members of the commission, I would just like to state that, I assist with many other boards and commissions as well. If there are specific items that say they pop up between the end of today's meeting and even 1 or 2 months from now, somewhere before the next meeting, you can always send those to your chair for consideration so that those can be put on the agenda. So if there are burning things or things that you think are really important that need to be discussed, I know our chairman is pretty open to having conversations. So you can just, pop that by earlier. So maybe he can make sure he understands, what that specific item that you're thinking of. And then he could help, perhaps with your input to help, craft how it actually goes on the agenda when it, before it's finalized. Thanks.
So Valerie, in terms of that, then, it's important for the commissioners to send it just to the chair.
Yes,
Here's
to avoid the
the
rolling
agenda.
quorum issue.
Yeah, okay. And so then if John hears nothing, he can certainly post the agenda or send the agenda to each one of us a couple of days before.
Yes, as I'm not discounting anything he says, but I'm just saying, in addition to all that he's stating with his change protocol of perhaps getting the draft agenda out earlier for input, if there's something burning that you really think needs consideration or that needs to be brought to the commission's attention, I believe you can do that at any time and have that robust discussion with the chair to see whether or not in his discretion, because he's the person who decides exactly what is on the agenda, of course with the the input of all of the commission members. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. We can certainly wake them up in the middle of the night on Sunday.
So
No. Thank
So-
you.
Don't just wait 10 days before the meeting to bombard him with tons of topics and then his head might explode or something.
Right.
So my pledge pending the outcome of let's say agenda item number 12 is that you'll get a notice from me, say a couple weeks before the meeting, prodding you for any input so we can get that coordinated before I have to turn it in and get it officialized, checked, cleaned up, my mistakes changed, and then posted. So, okay. If there are no further discussions on the language of the standing rule, then I will move on to the action item, which is adoption of the determination as distributed to the commission, just clarifying that language along with, I think, the address of the museum.
And if you like, this chair and members of the commission, I'll just reiterate that those are the minimums that are required by the Open Meetings Act. It is generally the same, 10 days meeting notice via the website and posting both at the museum and the Department of Cultural Affairs. And then 72 hours with the agenda. And then for special meetings, there's the 72 hours notice for both meeting notice and agenda, and emergency meetings, of course, if there were, something horrible to happen that would need the immediate attention of the commission, those could be called within, I believe, 24 hours. And if there are any other questions related to the open meetings resolution known as Standing Rule 1, let me know, but it is essentially the same as last year's.
John, I'll move we vote to approve the change.
Second.
Motion is seconded. We'll proceed by a roll call vote for this one. And I believe we have 9 commissioners present currently. So Commissioner Churchill,
Churchill, aye.
Commissioner Cross,
Aye.
Commissioner Elder,
Aye.
Commissioner Fahey,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner McAteer,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Leary.
Aye.
Beth, I didn't hear you.
Aye. Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Aye.
Commissioner Omeg,
Aye.
and I vote yes myself. Motion is passed. All right, now we have another item that comes up every January. This is the end of my term as chair of the commission, and will stand, and I believe it's also the end of the term for the vice chair, which are the 2 officers that we have elected by the commission. And we will open the floor for nominations for those 2 offices, starting with the office of the chair for the year 2022 term.
John, I'll nominate you.
Second.
All right. Third. All right.
You're doing an excellent job, and continuity at this stage, I think, is critical.
I will accept that, but I prefer to think of it as I finally think I understand what to do something. So it took me a year to figure that out, but I will accept that nomination. And is there a nomination for vice chair? Beth, I'm going to renominate you as vice chair.
I knew you
I'll
did.
second that.
Very easy.
Third again.
Are you willing to continue in that role, Beth?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Valerie, how do we proceed with the election? Is that a roll call vote for those positions, or how does that work?
Yes, it is a roll call vote. You can do them independently or together, depending on the pleasure of the commission.
No. If there are no objections, we'll save time and vote on both of those nominations together. Commissioner Churchill. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to raise my hand. I
Oh.
apologize.
That's okay. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my list. Commissioner Cross,
Aye.
Commissioner Elder,
Aye.
Commissioner Fahey,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner McAteer,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Omeg,
Aye.
and I vote aye myself. All right. Motion is adopted. Now on to item number 13, which is standing subcommittee reports and discussion of museum needs. There are 4 of those, and I'll start with the Development Committee and ask Commissioner Cross if she has anything to report to us on any activities over the past quarter.
Well, thank you very much. And I was able to attend the foundation meeting last week. And then I followed that up with a conference call, well, a WebEx, but with Johnny, myself, and Cliff Hudson. And so some things kind of came to light. It looks like currently we have a number of contracts that are being worked on, or maybe not worked on, which is the educational programs agreement between the commission and the foundation, general operating agreement between the foundation and the museum, and is that it? and I think that's it. I think there's a lease agreement between the foundation and the museum. But I think there's at least one agreement here that maybe we as the commission are obligated to work on. And I wasn't sure exactly what the process was and how we do that. I don't know if this is something that maybe the foundation, the museum, and commission gets together and talk about the agreement, then we send it to DCA for them to do the final once over. But I guess I need to know and understand kind of what that process needs to be so that we can start at least working on these agreements.
So I think my response, which is a question, I think, on that, and I'll open this question to whomever can help us answer that, is what decisions need to be made in order for that, so that either those contracts or those agreements to become in force? Is there a specific decision that the commission needs to make, or is there a specific decision that has to be made by the or a specific negotiation that has to take place?
Johnny would be able to back me up on this one. So the agreements are actually between the Department of Cultural Affairs and the foundation.
Okay.
And so the education, the event agreements that Johnny and Cliff, and they've been working very closely with Kathy, who's kind of the staff liaison on the creation of these. And we had to go through a bit of negotiation. We also had to kind of come up with, get permission from legal for the way that the funds, essentially you take an event like the Trinity Site Tour. It has foundation effort. It has a lot of staff effort as well, with staff doing work. And so we're both working at it. And so the question that Beth had for Johnny on, how much net comes out of that, et cetera. Basically, in the end, what will happen is the state and the foundation will split those funds in some way, shape, or form. And then it's a matter of what happens to those funds that are either going to the state or the foundation. But especially on the state side, it was, do they go straight to the state, or do they stay in the foundation in a restricted fund to be used by the museum for upgrades, et cetera. And so those things had to be clarified. They just recently got clarified. And so now we're into the kind of the final stages of it's going to be legal review, the final agreement, then legal review by the foundation's lawyers, by the DCA lawyers, and then we all sign it. And basically the foundation will sign it, the staff will sign it, and the secretariat will sign it as well.
Okay,
and
so
it also appears that the education programs agreement is specifically between New Mexico Museum of Space History Commission and the International Space Hall of Fame Foundation. So I don't disagree on some of these other ones, but that one specifically seems to be between the commission and the foundation. It most certainly involves the museum as well, and the Department of Cultural Affairs. So I'm not sure how we go about working on this. Is this something that is negotiated between the foundation and DCA, and then the commission reads it and approves it? I don't know. I don't know what the process is.
okay. Johnny, is there something that you can do to shed some light on the expectations from the point of view of the foundation?
First off, I'm going to have to take a little bit of concern with the language. Both the general operating agreement and the education agreement specifically start out citing the Space History Commission and the foundation. So both of those agreements appear to be, that historically have been between the commission and the foundation. So now if it changes in the future, that's just whatever the future brings. The lease agreement is with the museum itself, because that's a property kind of agreement. But anyway, I can answer that. So there is some confusion there. The other thing that I would mention on that is we are working on that. We are engaging a lawyer that is familiar with DCA procedures. As a matter of fact, it's the same counsel that Museum of New Mexico Foundation uses. And so he's already familiar with a lot of how the relationship between foundations and museums. And as I understand, it also has a very good working relationship with DCA's counsel. And so we're hoping that helps us as we maybe finally put some to bed some of these agreements. But yeah, we're
Okay.
looking forward to setting down. We've been after that for 2 years now to just try to get somebody on the other side of the table. We're just now starting to see Kathy's on the other side of the table now, negotiating some of that. We've got our counsel to back us up on anything that we come up with or to advise us on how we do. But there are several things in those agreements. But I don't want to get into the detail that need to be updated because these agreements go back to 2001 and 2008. And obviously, a tremendous amount has changed since then, especially in the last 2 years. So,
Okay.
so there's a lot that needs to be set down and talked about and finalized before we finalize any of that. I hope that clears any of that up.
Well, actually, I think it does give me some information, and the way I'm going to respond to that is I'm going to specifically ask that our counsel, Valerie Joe, just coordinate with DCA's attorney on this, specifically because of the language in subpart G of the law that we abide by, which empowers the commission to enter into leases that affect the museum. And so there may be a reason that was written that way. And that's the end of my legal expertise, but I can see why that might have happened. So if I can ask a request that our counsel just coordinate with that and then give us any advice on what we might need to do, that can maybe keep us in the clear with respect to what we need to do, if anything. Is that something you would do for us, please, Valerie?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
Just pass along the information and I can coordinate with Mr. Orwell. And yeah, I'll take a look and give some advice.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that will take care of that particular item. And Rhonda, thank you for going to those meetings and bringing that to our attention. And if we have a role in that, we'll take it seriously and figure out what we can do to help.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the development committee or any more comments to discuss today? Okay. Mission and long range planning. Dr. Churchill, anything to talk about with us today?
No, the committee has nothing to report. We have been effectively inactive for the fall of 2021. And I wanted to say that what you, John, and Chris outlined today as a plan going forward in 2022 has me very excited. And
Okay.
I'm hoping the rest of the committee is going to be on board and that we can really get the momentum rolling in 2022. And, I like the idea of, getting involved with the extension as that was described too with Chris. So I think it's reasonable given how much road there is to hoe to get all this together.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, I'm going to work towards that as a plan. I'm going to continue to explore the possibilities of getting us together and doing some kind of a stakeholder involvement. What I was terming the creative or intuitive parts of that planning process, so we can lay those foundations and then we can get our heads down in smaller groups and talk about that. But I'll work towards doing that. I have spoken twice with the secretary about that, and we'll figure out what the schedule is, and we'll try to get people together and start that process. And as Chris was saying, we've got some runway ahead of us, but it's best to do it right, and it's best to do it so that it helps the museum succeed. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to do it just because we're obligated to do it. Okay.
Thank
you. Education committee. I believe there's also a mention on here of a briefing by the staff education team, along with any comments that Commissioner Fahey wants to bring to our attention. I didn't notice that item before. Is that something specifically that you added, Chris?
No, in fact, actually, I think that might be left over from the last one when Dave was talking about the programs. So, and I don't think, Dave, you don't have anything specific to add to this one, or do you?
No, nothing new to add. Just last time report is still good today.
Okay, yeah, I think that is a mistake on the agenda that is, again, down to me because I didn't see that when I was modifying last month's agenda to turn it into this month's agenda. So my mistake.
John,
Yes.
so before we continue, it will be helpful for me, I don't know anyone else, if the chairs of the subcommittees or you can describe the list of who is in each subcommittee. I think I'm in two different committees. Subcommittees, but yeah, that would be helpful to everybody to know who is on first, who is on second.
Yeah, that's fine, Paul. I believe I believe I sent you a list of all of that, a spreadsheet of all that, probably a couple of months ago, but if you don't have it, I can make sure it's updated and get you a copy of that back.
No, thank you for a reminder. I can look for it. Yes, I vaguely remember now. Thank you.
And I think there's a column in there that sort of maps who's on what committee. I'm going to go cross-reference it and make sure I still have that all correct because, I make mistakes. Kimberly,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, John, that I have a copy of that as well. But if you have an updated version, please send me one as well.
I'll check it and see if it needs any changes.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll just briefly talk about the education subcommittee, and I will recall who is on that. So we met as a subcommittee on November 19th with Chris Orwell and Education Director Dave Dooling, as well as Outreach Coordinator Tony Gondola. And the commissioners that are on that education subcommittee is myself as chair, Commissioner Omeg, Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Elder, as well as Commissioner Fryer. And so at that meeting, we basically got a more in-depth description of the educational activities from the museum staff, and just getting an understanding of some of the major milestones they had coming up and where we as a commission can be helpful. And so one of the sort of main activities that they were planning for is their summer camp for the summer of 2022, which as of right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, the intent is that is happening and is going to be in person.
Yes,
that
is
does
correct.
Okay, fingers crossed. But so we just had a conversation related to what goes into that, but also some of the successes and kind of comparing activities that occur sort of pre-COVID as well as what we need to get back to as restrictions lessen and so forth. One of the things that we did talk about was sort of the resources and the facilities available to doing outreach activities, and and what makes this sort of activity unique is that most museums, when they have educational activities, the intent is that the audience comes to them. This museum, they go where there's a need. So they actually have sort of a portable planetarium, portable demonstrations, and they will kind of go to if a school requests them and things of that nature. So one of the things that did come up was how can we as a commission kind of make it where they have sort of more of these opportunities that is, sort of worth the effort of them sort of packing up and sort of doing this traveling show. And correct me if I'm wrong, there was sort of like a capacity where it was a minimum of people where it's worth the time for them to sort of go and travel and do that. And I thought it was 24. Is that correct?
Yes, actually it's 23. We have two passenger vans and 23 is the max that we can carry because we need a driver plus one other person to help wrangle the kids. So there's always one person available in case something happens. Right now, Mike Shinneberry is pinging a couple of possibilities for hiring a school bus in the summer, which would make the transportation much easier.
Okay.
But
I think,
And that's real.
Just as a
I'm
note,
s-
that was really only for activities where we have to transport the kids.
right,
Right.
right. The kids in our camp, we take,
Or in Silver City wants to hire us to come out and do a portable planetarium show. And, something about the zero gravity demonstrations that we do and things like that. As long as they pay for us to do that, and we have a set pricing system for all of that, and it covers essentially travel and time and things like that, then we'll go out and do it for 3 people as long as they pay us.
Right. And so, and that kind of came out of conversation is that, where can we sort of highlight or bring some of like what opportunities that would be for the staff to kind of come and do that show, like, and it seems like they're willing to come, whether it's in Albuquerque or, wherever, as long as, let's say, those costs are covered. And so it's just an idea of how can we sort of utilize those resources, effectively, since it is there and we have a motivated staff. At the time we had this meeting, I believe, Chris, you were still looking for an additional educational instructor. But it seems like from your report, you were able to get that filled. Oh, no. Okay. That's still
No, sadly, we've gone through one set of interviews. We've gotten a second list of candidates that we only had one that was qualified, and we're waiting for another list of qualified candidates now.
Okay. And so, so I think, like, as far as it was a good meeting to sort of just understand what's going on and what we can look forward to. But I think where they really, can use some support is really just letting it be known what they offer and what they're willing to do, as well as maintaining, I guess, the traffic on the sort of virtual demonstrations and things that they do. They have a lot of content on YouTube, and just kind of maintaining that as well. Even if COVID settles down, it seems like it was a good outreach to at least get that sort of knowledge out there. And I think there was one thing that was discussed, and I guess I'll put you on the spot, Commissioner Omeg, about an activity that could have been done with educators and the museum. Did you want to speak to that as well?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Kim. So we are planning on a face-to-face NAS in the classroom professional development for educators. And we have a set day finalized for July 18 and 19. Last summer, we did this virtually over the span of 2 weeks, 2 different dates each week. And this time we're hoping that we're going to be able to do it face-to-face, courtesy of the museum hosting us. So that would be great. And it has to do with the Sphero program, coding, and we're going to be working with the rovers that they have. And then day 2, we may have some time to tour the museum. And I want to do a shout out here to Chris and Chair John for organizing this visit to the museum. I was finally able to attend last December. And if you haven't done so, please do it because Chris will give you the inside scoop or behind the scenes story of every little exhibit that they have. So it's a wonderful opportunity. So the teacher will have a chance to experience that as well from the 4 corners of the state. So we're hoping to put that into place, and I think will work well. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Paulo.
And that's and the only thing I would add is as far as resources, they do have flight simulators at the support center that can be utilized for sort of a hands-on experience. And so, and I believe those are portable. So the question is just like, how to sort of maximize using that. Right now they're just in storage, but it's a very good resource to just kind of get students excited about just sort of space exploration, as well as introducing the concepts and science behind it. So like I said, that sort of concludes my report, but like I said, it was more of a sort of getting to know, getting to understand, but definitely we want to make sure we're value added and how we can sort of help get them sort of back to where they were sort of pre-COVID as far as outreach and getting the word out. So if there's anything else to add, Chris, please do.
And I just wanted, it was a great meeting that the education committee and the staff had, and hopefully we were able to get out information. Really, the bottom line crux of what she was really saying there is that the museum I came from before this one, the Cosmosphere up in Kansas, I had a $360,000 marketing budget, and I didn't think it was enough. Here at the New Mexico Museum of Space History, I have less than a $30,000 marketing budget, and DCA doesn't have much more than that. For the entire state, Patrick can echo that that statement. And so when we're trying to get out, we have all these programs, we have them available, but getting the word out to all the parts of the state is one of our biggest problems. There's only so much we can do with $30,000. Most of it has to do with billboards and newspaper ads. So there's not money for marketing out to the far reaches, and it's difficult to get that info out to the teachers in areas that we're not located in, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, the eastern and western parts of the country. So that's where the commission folks, the education committee, can really help spread the word about the fact that Space Museum has programs that can come to your classroom, both in person, remotely, etc. And then those programs, we'll go out and do it anywhere. We've gone out of state to do programs, so that's something we can do anywhere.
So I would challenge the members of the commission, including myself, with this. If Chris, if you can help us by giving us some kind of a marketing package that we can take to our contacts. Many of us have contacts within universities, national laboratories, and other organizations that do outreach on their own. NASA does a lot of this. I know many of you do as well. And I would challenge members of the commission to look for those opportunities to spread that word in the corners of the state that you come from. And I think that would be very helpful to just get that kind of word out and encourage those folks we know to go help us do this. So I would challenge us all to do that and ask Chris if you would supply us with the kind of information you'd like us to get out there, and we'll go forward and try to spread the word.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that stuff ready to go, so we will get that out. Within the week, we'll have essentially a kind of a commissioner's package sort of thing that's easy to get to somebody.
Okay, I will go do what I can do to spread that around. I have one other question in general, and I don't know who got the answer to this. I fully appreciate that we go and do educational programs, and the people who can pay for those programs should pay for those programs. My question is, what if you can't pay for those programs? Is there a mechanism that exists to help some underserved communities or schools or whatever that would love to have a program like that, but aren't even thinking about asking because they don't think they can afford it?
Currently, there's nothing that the museum does. There's no granting programs. We have had schools like down in El Paso. The school got grants. Out of the base, the schools got grants and then did stuff with us. So there's a lot of programs like that available to the schools that are out there. There's a myriad of programs, but to be honest, they run into the same problem we do of staffing and time to write the grants and execute the grants. So that's been an issue there for those programs.
Well, that's not, I don't have any particular suggestions about that, but I guess what I would ask is for us to do some thinking about what solutions might be possible, and maybe help funnel some of those ideas to the education committee. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I know that problems like that are prevalent and relevant, and I think they're particularly so in a state like New Mexico. And I won't go into why I know that and have seen it in the past, but I also know how meaningful it can be when somebody takes that kind of educational opportunity to an organization that wouldn't normally be able to think they could afford to participate. So if we can come up with some ways to do that, I think we'll have added some value. Okay, any more questions or comments for Kimberly or the Education Committee? All right, I'll give just a couple of words from the Education Committee. I'm sorry, the Collections Committee, or the incipient Collections Committee, because we're still trying to do this sort of chicken and egg thing of bootstrapping ourselves into existence. So as reflected in the minutes from last time, we established the committee, but we didn't make any formal appointments, and Commissioners Fahey, O'Leary, and I all expressed interest in serving on that committee. And after consulting with Valerie Jo, there is no legal reason that I can't make those appointments official and say, right now, from the commission's perspective, those are the commissioners who are on this committee. There are some other folks we are trying to define as being on the committee from the museum, and working with Chris on that, the curator and the assistant and the director. We all need to work together to make that function. But if you are all amenable, Kimberly, and Beth, I would propose that we make those nominations official, and that is from the perspective of the commission, the members of that committee that we're trying to stand up.
I'll move that we make those appointments permanent.
Thank you. I don't believe we need to vote on that. I think we just need to. It's more of we can acquiesce to it, but I don't believe it calls a vote. Okay, well then, so be it. I was informed that I can just make those appointments, so I'm going to do that. And having done that, let's see. So Chris had mailed out to us the current collections plan. And we've been trading some comments and some edits, and most of these I would describe as either pretty minor and clarifying, or two moving the commission and committee's duties out of the plan and into a standing rule, which really more fits the operational structure of how the committees operate. So we're in the process of negotiating some changes to the plan, and then establishing a standing rule that is reflective of the obligations in the law. And so I've drafted 2 drafts of that. I've sent them out to Chris and the other members of the committee, and to Valerie Jo, because my ability to write things in the right legal language is very limited. So we're working on that. And as I said, it's intended to clarify how we function with respect to our obligations. That's the intent. And the forward path that I want to pursue, that I'm planning to pursue with this, and I've discussed with the secretary, is to basically codify the status quo by adopting the current collections plan with some of these tweaks that we've been talking about. So we're going to, over the next quarter, we're going to negotiate these language changes and try to clean up a few little things in there. And then we'll bring, at the next commission meeting, we'll put on the agenda the adoption of the standing rule that defines the structure and function and obligations of the committee. And we will adopt the collections plan, and that should fulfill our obligation, which is in the law, that says that we adopt rules that govern these activities. The intent here isn't for the commission to drive any big changes to the plan. And I say this, for one, because changes require planning and they require unidentified resources. And I feel that the way we can add the most value is for the committee to perform a review of the plan once it's adopted, and then offer any of our findings and recommendations back to the museum and to DCA for them to consider and prioritize, because they're the ones that are going to need to implement changes. They're the ones that are going to need to prioritize and allocate resources. And we can make recommendations, however we want to. That, I believe, will fulfill our obligation or our responsibility to exercise the trusteeship over the museum's collections, which is also one of our obligations under the law that establishes the commission. So I think in this way, what it allows us to do is to provide value-added recommendations back to DCA, back to the museum. Let them prioritize these. Our obligation will be to provide the kind of rationale why we're making these recommendations. And in order to do that, we'll probably consult with some other museums. We'll learn about best practices. And for my part, as I said earlier, I want to learn about what works at the museum and how we can help make the jobs of the people that devote their lives to this important work easier. And that's really my goal. So not trying to upset anything. I'm really trying to just help things work as best they can. So, Beth?
Yeah, and I want to also talk a little bit about what John and Kimberly and I had in several meetings, that because this is a collections committee or subcommittee, that we have to hear the voices, the concerns, and the ideas of the people who manage it. Sue Taylor, Jim Mayberry, the people that are directly responsible as staff and have worked in the museum for many years doing this important work. Because to reiterate, the museum is the sum of its collections. So that during this process, as we go through the standing rule and also through the collections management plan, that we're doing it as a team. And so I'd like to just acknowledge the conversations that I've had with museum staff and also with others, curators in other state museums and museums that I know about. So I think our efforts are only rewarded by the fact that we can build consensus and understand the needs, desires, and the problems that can be solved by having a better understanding of how the collections function the best and how we can help that.
Oh, good words, Beth. Thank you for that. Okay, so that's my report from the collections committee and my plan for how to take it forward over the course of the next couple of quarters. And you should be seeing some stuff on the agenda coming up, and I'll work with Chris and Sue and Beth and Kimberly over the course of the next quarter, and we'll get you some materials that we can review and talk about at the next meeting. Okay, any questions for me? Okay, we're in the home stretch here. Item 14 is any announcements. And I believe that Beth had one for an upcoming event, some space archaeology event.
This feels like the Beth and John show here. But I do want to make people aware, and if John, you could share your screen, or Chris, I've sent it both to both of you, or we can send it out. We can send it out after the meeting. On January 14th, the ISS conducted its first archaeological experiment. Well, how the heck do you do archaeology on the ISS? Well, several of my colleagues have been working and supported by NASA and the Australian Science Council to look at the relationship between the patterns of material culture, the artifacts, the tools, the things that astronauts use on the ISS, and patterns of behavior. There's going to be a lecture March 3rd with my colleague, Dr. St. Walsh out of the Archaeological Institute of North America about how this is happening. And it's a first. It should be exciting if you would like to look at behavior on this space station in terms of how an archaeologist might look at it. And just to put in a plug for space archaeology, It really is looking at a place, the ISS, and a temporal, a time period, which is like 5 minutes ago, and how the astronauts perform in these spaces. So if anybody's more interested in this esoteric discipline, I'd be happy to send you information. And this grew out of work that happened now over 2 decades ago that was funded by the New Mexico Space Grant Consortium, which Paulo Ermeg now heads. So the saga continues, and I think it's interesting. It caught the press. Science News will have an article, Scientific American will, CNN, CBC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation is all interested in how people behave in space and how they utilize the environment, which is the ISS, and utilize the tools and the places where they work.
Oh,
I
thank
can
you,
share
Beth.
the screen if you wanted real quick to see that.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Chris. While you're doing that, let me give you an apropos anecdote, which is amusing. I was in a meeting a couple of years ago, where the first billionaire who bought himself a week's vacation on the space station was talking about his trip. And speaking of behaviors, he admitted, much to the surprise of the NASA officials in this meeting, that while he was enjoying his time there, he took apart a panel on the space station in the interior and hid a little treasure in there that he had brought with him, and then sealed it back up again. The idea being someday somebody would find this. Mm-hmm. And of course, this raised the alarm with all the NASA people who thought, well, what if you screwed up? But it was one of those behavioral things that Beth's talking about. Somebody hid a treasure on the space station. He didn't tell us where.
John, this reminds me of the career that I've had, where people have told me, engineers, people who worked on the Apollo program, what they put on the Apollo missions to the moon and ended up on the moon. Mm-hmm. That was not on the authorized, regularized list of the NASA Apollo missions. So there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of that
we still don't know about.
There's a lot of that.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Well, we see your.
We see a plane. We don't see what I sent you.
You don't see what? Okay. How about
I'll just send it to everybody because, well, this is the square project. Yeah. And essentially they're doing a 1 by 1 meter square, and they're filming and photographing it. One of the astronauts, Katie Baker, I think her name is, there she is looking at change through time of how they utilize the space within the ISS at different locations and different modules on the ISS, and how that changes. So I think it's exciting, and the lecture with the American Archaeological Institute is free, and I can send that out to everybody.
Thanks, Beth.
And I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing, and the system is not letting me do it. So I may actually drop off for a moment and then come back on. See if that.
Okay, we only have one other piece of business to transact, which we'll do now, which is just the confirmation of the dates that have been established for our upcoming commission meetings. Last time, I believe we already talked about January 22nd. Although I do have to say that April 22nd, at last month's meeting, April 29th had been alternatively proposed, which would have been our normal meeting time. I also noted earlier that April 22nd coincides with that other cultural activity that Beth brought up earlier. So this is an opportunity for us to change that meeting, which is 3 months out, back to the normal date of April 29th, which I believe Chris had recommended last month that we consider. Does anybody have any objections to making that change? Okay. With that, I will propose that we change next quarter's meeting back to the 29th of April, when it was actually originally intended to happen. Along with that, we have meetings which are scheduled for the 29th of July. And then one we did not talk about before, which would, I believe, be the 28th of October. These would be our normally 3 quarterly meetings. I still can't promise that I'm not going to try to add something if we actually get a chance to go meet face to face. But for right now, those are our regularly scheduled obligatory meetings. And if there are no objections, we'll record those dates of 29 April, 29 July, and 28 October. And I believe that there is, that being an action item, we do need to actually vote on that.
I'll move we approve the change to the schedule.
I second.
Seconded by Commissioner Fahey. All right, by roll call vote then, Commissioner Churchill,
Aye.
Commissioner Cross,
Aye.
Commissioner Elder,
Aye.
Commissioner Fahey,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner McAteer,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Omig,
Aye.
and I vote aye. All right, the change to the date, that date, and the adoption of the other 2 is passed. And the meeting of the New Mexico Museum of Space History Governors Commission stands adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you all for taking hour and 50 minutes out of your day.
Thank you, John.
Good meeting.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.